Greetings from Chicago, Illinois. My name is Kalman Applebaum. I'm a professor of anthropology and an early music enthusiast. With me virtually from Spain is Maestro Savall, probably the world's premier interpreter, performer, and conductor of Western early music. In advance of his concert on February 28th in St. Paul, Minnesota, he has agreed to join me for a discussion about his music, and especially the program he'll be introducing in February. The concert will be featured in the International Spanish Music Festival, arranged and sponsored by the Casa de España in Minnesota. Maestro Savall's work spans medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque era music. Starting with the rich heritage of Catalan and Spanish music, Maestro Savall has extended his interest to all the major European musical traditions, including ethnic and religious influences coming from as far as the Balkans, Istanbul, and Jerusalem. It's fair to add the terms ethnomusicologist and musical ambassador to his credits. In collaboration with musicians in 3 separate ensembles that he founded, his discography incorporates a catalog of well over 200 recordings. He's the recipient of many honors, including several honorary doctorates, a Grammy, a Handel Music Prize, the Lenny Sonning Music Prize, the French Legion of Honor, and the Gold Medal of the Generalitat of Catalonia, in recognition of his contribution to his native cultural heritage of Catalonia. Not least, in 2008, he was appointed ambassador for the European Union Year of Intercultural Dialogue. Maestro, thank you for your time. It's a privilege to speak with you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Your concert is entitled Musica Nova 1500 to 1700, the Venetian influences in musical. What was the inspiration and the aims of the program?
The program of concert is inspired on the fantastic projection of the influences of Venezia in the musical Europe. And I think the beginning of the Renaissance, the Italian civilizations has a very important role. And in this context of the Italian civilization, Venice has a very particular. We know that, for example, some Venetian musicians bring for the first time the viola da gamba to the British Islands. And we know also the contact from Venice was very important with the Orient, with the Ottoman Empire, with the Jerusalem, with all the Mediterranean cultures. And this you can, I think, feel a lot in the music of what was played in this time in the beginning of the Renaissance in Venice.
In earlier projects, such as Jerusalem, the City of Two Pieces, you drew on Jewish, Christian, and Muslim sources to present the history of the city in musical sequences. Jerusalem's political and religious history is very complex, but Venice, it seems, might present even greater challenges because Venice was a maritime republic, which meant it could absorb an unfathomable range of influences all around the rim of the Mediterranean Sea, as well as from Europe. How did you decide what was significant among these influences to create the program?
Well, sorry, can you repeat the beginning of the question? Because I don't see anymore you now. You have stopped.
Yeah, that's intentional, so that the camera can focus on you. I hope you can hear me all right.
Yes, okay, but well, it's a little unclear. But if you repeat, it's okay.
Yes, I was saying that Venice presents a very great challenge, I think, because it was a maritime republic, and it absorbed influences from a great many places all around the rim of the Mediterranean Sea, as well as from Europe. And so when you approached this project of trying to find what were the significant influences and what were the clearest musical voices from the era for your program, how did you go about researching and what was significant?
Well, I think I have start putting a program who goes from 1500 to the end of the Baroque, the first Baroque time of the 1700. And in the program, it's in every group some of the most important publications for the time. Venetian, the first Venetian dances, typical from Venice. Then the publication of Musica Nova, 1540, with the first really concerts and ricercares from Giulio da Modena, Paravosco, and many others. Then the publication of Ricercari Capricci from Andrea Gravieri, very important composer for the whole development of the instrumental language. Then some also again Canzoni alla Francese from 1600 from Guami, and again Balli Veneziani from one of the more representative of this time, Mainerio, from around 1600. Then fantasies and dances of the court of Louis XIII. Then we go to Paris, because in Paris, as you know, in the 1600s, one of the most influenced political personalities was the Cardinal Mazarin, from Italian influences. He was responsible to bring to Paris also Lully, an Italian composer from who starts to develop the French music. And then we make here a representation of the Italian influence of the Italian music in Paris, with the Pavan and the fantasy by Rossi about from his opera Orphée was represented in Paris for the first time in 1640, and some dances created for the celebrations of the crowning of Louis XIII. In the second part, we continue in the Canzoni da Sonare. We stay always in contact with Venice, with the great composers like Giovanni Gabrieli, Tarquino Merola. Then we make a short travel to England, influenced also by the Italian music with the Pavans and Galliards. And here we take two examples of the fantastic composer John Dolan, with his Lacrime Pavan and the King of Denmark, Galliard. Then we make also the tour to Germany. One of the most influenced by the Venetian style is Samuel Scheidt, which we have from him the Paduan, the Courant Dolorosa, and the Galliard Battaglia, which are also typical Italian style pieces. 1644, we return to Venice with the Corona Melodica, with music by Biagio Marini. 1673, we go, it's the publication for La Cetra from Giovanni Regrenzi with his sonata for 4 viola da gamba. And then we finish with his Spanish folias and dances, inspired also with the influence of Italy. We will play a piece by Pedro de Raucho, Portuguese composers, with consonancias, which is typical, like the pieces with a lot of dissonances, the contrary of consonants. Then from Pedro de San Lorenzo, other Portuguese with La Folia. And finally, Joan Cabanillas, a Catalan composer from Valencia, with his Corrente Italiana. And this is the idea of the program. We finish 200 years later as from the beginning of the concert.
Wow, it sounds fantastic. Let me ask you, when you're preparing these pieces, how important is the original context for their performance to you? Some of these were court music or church music, or done in folk settings, dances, fanfares, or music that was written for the enjoyment of performers rather than audiences. How much do you have to take that into account when you're preparing them?
In this case, because we use a viol concert was a typical. Some of these pieces, especially the Canzoni da Sonare, they don't have a specific instrumentation. You can play with the gamba console, you can play with violins and bass violin. You can play with flutes or with cornets and sackboots. It's depending of your possibilities. Some of these pieces was played in churches, of course, when they play with wind instruments. But we do in a chamber music context, and then chamber music is then the gamba concert is the perfect chamber ensemble for playing this type of music. The most fine ensemble to play concert music and counterpoint music. And in this case, I take in consideration the character of each piece, the specific style of the early Renaissance, of the late Baroque, and we work then according the style of each place. We don't play, for example, the Lacrime Papa von Dahlen in the same way that we played Pavane la Petite Guerre from Louis XIII, which is a strong Pavane with words character. No? And this is what I think. Well, it's very difficult to explain this with words. You have to listen to this.
Okay. What do you see as the balance point between trying to capture what the music must have sounded like at that time, and then today freely modifying the music in order to create something for this moment?
Well, first time, nobody will be able to know how the music was sounding this time, except you have a fantastic time machine to travel in the time. We know a lot of information about the ways, aspects, atmosphere. We know through the technical information about how to play a viola da gamba, how to play the bow, how to make them the pressure, the dynamic, the ornaments, the articulation. We know a lot of things, but finally, we are talking about art music, and art is creation. We have scores, we have some information about the notation of the music, of the lines, of the things, but the essential thing, it's maybe after reading all the texts, they help you to have an idea from the style, to have an idea from the tempis, to have an idea from the articulation, to have an idea about how this music was danced, about the choreographic movements of the dance. This is something we have to do. But after all this enormous information that you have to assimilate, I'm assimilating this already 50 years. Yeah? After this, you are alone in the concert with use musicians of all instrument, and you have to make nice music. You have to make this music sounding again beautiful. Bring it to the people a magical moment that people can feel, oh, I am in Venice, I am in Germany, I am in England, you know. I think this is the most difficult thing and the most impossible to describe in an objective way. In a certain aspect, this is so difficult to reach as if you are a composer to compose a beautiful piece. You can know all the technique of a composition, but how you arrive to compose a beautiful piece, you have to be inspired. You have to have a great idea. And this is what the performers we are doing every day in every concert, to be inspired at the moment and have the feeling to bring all the beauty from the music to the audience.
Yeah. Well, speaking of being alone, that expression that you use, um, I think of the dangers of improvisation. And you're famed as a performer and an improviser on the violin. There are different kinds of improvisation I'm familiar with. There's the motivic transformations and extended solos in contemporary jazz. In the Baroque, there was a melodically oriented ornamentation, or if you were skilled enough, the extemporaneous adding of contrapuntal parts. how would you characterize your improvisational approach in general, and maybe specifically as it applies to the Venetian music?
Well, in this program, there's only um, some melodical ornamentation improvised. There's, um, for example, pam 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 pam, some feeling in certain moments in the Gallia Battaglia or in certain pieces which are very typical. You can do and setuta ram pam pa pam para pam para pam pam para pam para pam. You can do some ornamentations. We know about all the thesis existing from devotees, from Ganassi, from the how to improvise in this way. This is something very very clear. But we use this also mostly in the repeat, not in the first time mostly. When we do improvisations, we are doing this when we play for the second time, the movement of the piece. But so I'm sure that in the concert we will maybe do an encore, and I'm probably we will improvise on the Folia or on the Canarios or on the Gallardo. We will do something with improvisations. But the program, it's made with really composed pieces, they don't let space to improvise really, except in an ornamentation, which is different from a free improvisation.
Mm-hmm. And is it principally the soloist at that moment who is given the permission to improvise? Because if you're in a group,
No. In the consort, when you have 5 parts, everybody can do something. Yeah. It's not. Of course, it's more easy to improvise when you have a nice melody and you have the top melody. But also the middle voices or the bass can also improvise. Everybody has the possibility to improvise. This is not a problem.
okay. Um, Now you said, and I know that you've been doing this for a very long time. You say for 50 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I have a sense. I mean, thinking about your work that I'm familiar with, that because of Spain's particular geography and history, that would be the country in Europe that would most likely be to produce a musician with your varied interests. In turn, how do you think that your background in performing early Spanish music might affect how you interpret and perform music from elsewhere uh, in Europe?
Well, I have to say I have started to perform before the same time I have started to perform Spanish music by Diego Ortiz, by the Cancioneros. I have started to perform Marin Marais, Christopher Simpson, Tobias Hume at the same time, and German music, the Bach sonatas was my first. I have played the Bach sonatas with the cello before I play any Spanish music. And before I started viola da gamba in 1965, I have been playing 9 years all type of European music, from Beethoven, Brahms, Haydn, Dvorak, Bartok, Debussy. I'm a classical format in the classical repertoire. Before I start to study early music, I was more home with Beethoven and with Brahms as with Frescobaldi or with Marin Marais. But I think I will agree with you in one aspect. I was always conscient that my background and my cultural roots are different from many other musicians from other countries, because in my roots I know that we have some Christian blood, Jewish blood, and Arabic blood. And this is something, my family comes from Valencia. Valencia was very strong mix with Arabs and Jews, and it's very difficult to know what are my ancestors. It's I think, and I'm feeling home when I'm playing Sephardic melody, or when I'm playing an Arabic dance or the Mawashal, I'm feeling home also. I feel something it's taught to me. And I think this is something special from this. Spain is the only country in Europe who has been 700 years in contact with the three monotheistic religions. And this is a lot of time.
So the 15th through 17th century in Venice, but especially in Italy and
Yes,
elsewhere, was also the time for the emergence of national styles. And given what you have just said about your own background, it feels almost as if you expect the music to come through your ethnic heritage and reveal itself in some meaningful way. Do you think that that's something that was taking place, that people were coming to recognition of that in Venice at that time, or in
yes. Well,
Europe during those?
in Venice, it was a very cosmopolitan city in this time. When the expulsion of the Jewish people in Spain, the many Jewish families, they go to Venice, to Rome, to Italy. And in Venice, you can find a very strong influence from the Ottoman and from Oriental influences, because it was the La Porta d'Oriente, was the gateway from Orient. And you can find in Venice all the influences. Catalans in this 15th century was the most important commercial and military nation for the Mediterranean Sea. The king of Catalonia and Aragon, Alfonso V el Magnanimo, conquered Naples in 1453 and put the capital of Catalonia in Naples. And later was the Spanish people, I mean, the contact between Catalonia and Italy was very strong. The Valencia, Barcelona was in contact. Many Catalans was in Geneva and Venice until Istanbul. When the Ottomans attacked Constantinople in 1442, the people who defended the city was the Venetian, but was also the Constantinople, and then Venetians, Catalans, and Genovese. And these influences you can find in Venice from all these cultures. And this also because Venice was always people traveling from all the world. It was a very easy way to expand these influences around the world.
Well, I can hear from how you speak how you think of music as history and history as music,
Yeah.
and incorporate that in your work.
I think it is one of the most fascinating things. Music, it's really the living history of the music, of the human being. When I think you have to realize the people that will come in the concert, they will make a travel in Venice, in London, in Bremen, in Spain, in France, and this time the music makes them possible to travel and through the centuries.
I agree. And you have, I'm going to ask you a last question, which
Yeah, please,
is
please.
a little bit difficult to formulate and maybe a little bit difficult to answer as well, but let me try. Um, you've spoken of music and history. You've also spoken in other places of the unifying and even the spiritual power of music. We're living in strange times. Maybe it feels that way, particularly here now, 2 days after the U.S. election. But the role of the arts, the place of the arts in society is something that has been called very much into question. Now, reportedly, during World War II, Winston Churchill's ministers came to him with the plea that the country needed to conserve all of its resources for the war effort, and that therefore they should cut funding to the arts. And Churchill said to them, "Well, then what are we fighting for?"
Yeah,
You caused a stir last October when you refused Spain's prestigious National Music Award in
yes,
protest the government's failures in defending and supporting the arts. The
yes,
fact is that today it's the trend in most of the world to slash funding to the arts, with the argument that its support should be left to the marketplace. Pop music, doesn't have difficulty defending itself, but the same is not the case for art music.
yeah,
If it's not commercial ideology, then at least in the US, it's populist resentment toward what people see as snobbery that results in the lack of the support. So, can you see, and I realize that artists have faced some version of this difficulty in every era.
well,
Can you see,
I have a very strong argument. First time, first, uh, the music exists only when a singer sings, and an instrumentalist plays. Otherwise, we cannot hear the music. If we don't sing Monteverdi, uh, Monteverdi will not exist. If we don't play Mozart, Mozart will not exist. If we don't play Guillaume de Machaut, we will not hear this. I think to listen all this music from thousand years of civilization, we need musicians that are able to study and to play this. And this is one thing that I consider in this way the singers and musicians like, I will say, like living libraries or living museums. Everybody is happy to have the Metropolitan Museum in New York, no?
yes,
I
they
think
have
everybody,
they have
yeah, they
they have
have,
such a category in Japan. In Japan, they have living treasures, and they're
yes,
individuals, sometimes musicians, sometimes artisans, who have inherited some skill from times past, and because it lives only through their existence,
yes,
they're called living treasures.
yes. But the musicians that we are doing, bringing, conserving alive all these repertoires, we are in the same category as a museum.
Yeah,
We need the same
yeah.
support. Otherwise, this music will not exist. This is also a very important cultural heritage. And I think, many times people come after the concert to me and tell me, say me something like this, Mr. Savall, you don't know us, but you are in our home for more than 30 years. And thanks to your music, we have a better quality of life. And I think this is
Well,
what is important. Makes the music, the art in general, can make the quality of life much better because you can be more happy. You can be, when you are in difficulties, if you listen to nice music, you can be recovered peace. When you are angry, when you are sad, when the music helps to survive in the most difficult situations. When we need beauty, we need emotion to survive. Without this,
well,
your life makes no sense.
yes.
I
That's
understand that
that's
people. I understand what happens in America. It's a lot of people. They don't have any more his life. They have not any more sense. They have to work a lot for surviving not enough money to pay the schools, to pay the medicines. I understand this, but I don't think I don't think the solution is to destroy things and to start a war between classes and between. I think the solution is always listening to the others, be ready to make dialogue and respect the others and find solutions in a reasonable way. I think that but I understand what happens in America. It's a surprise for many people, but I think it's logical because today I think we are living in a world which is too many people are without the minimum necessary for life, and a few people have a lot, much too much they need, and it makes not a very harmonical world. It's no harmony in this world, you know. When 1% of the society has the 90% of the resources, and the 90% of the society has to survive with fighting every day to arrive at the end of the month. I think this is what we have to resolve in the next generations to find a way everybody can have a life with dignity and with possibilities.
Well, I, I agree. I hope that your music, when you come to the States in February, can give at least people some distraction from these troubles. And I'll conclude in something you just said yourself, which is that I, you don't know me, but you have been in my home for many years, and your music is so remarkably beautiful and transforming to mood and giving of beauty. So thank you for your music. It really is a privilege and a pleasure to speak with you, and I look forward to seeing you in person in February.
Thank you. I will
Thank you.
pleasure to meet you then personally.
Okay.
Thank you.